The security camera footage that would eventually save my life showed exactly what happened that night, but by the time anyone bothered to look at it, I'd already lost my job, my reputation, and nearly lost my daughter. It started with a phone call at 9:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, my boss Catherine Brennan's name flashing on my screen while I was helping my 6-year-old Emma with her math homework, her little face scrunched up in concentration over addition problems that seemed impossibly hard for someone so small. Catherine had never called me after hours, never acknowledged my existence outside the sterile fluorescent glow of the accounting firm where I processed invoices and tried to be invisible, so when I answered and heard her slurred speech, the background noise of a bar, the desperate edge in her voice saying, "James, I need help, I can't drive, please," every alarm in my head started screaming that this was a trap, that helping was dangerous, that I should hang up and pretend the call never happened. But I didn't, because I'm the kind of idiot who still believes doing the right thing matters, so I called Mrs. Henderson from across the hall to watch Emma, promised her I'd be back in an hour, and drove to the downtown bar where Catherine was waiting outside, leaning against the brick wall in her expensive suit that was rumpled now, her makeup smeared, her eyes unfocused in a way that made her look vulnerable and human instead of the cold perfectionist who'd never smiled at me once in 3 years. She stumbled when she tried to walk, and I caught her elbow, guided her to my beat-up Corolla that looked pathetic next to the luxury cars in that parking lot, helped her into the passenger seat while she mumbled something about a bad day, about pressure, about how nobody understood how hard it was at the top. I didn't respond, just programmed her address into my phone, some high-rise in the financial district that probably cost more per month than I made in a year, and started driving through the empty downtown streets, the city lights blurring past while Catherine dozed against the window. Halfway there, she woke up suddenly, her hand landing on my thigh, her fingers pressing against the fabric of my jeans in a way that made my entire body go rigid with panic. "You're a good guy, James," she said, her words thick and heavy. "You know that? A really good guy. Not like the others." I carefully lifted her hand off my leg, placed it back in her own lap, kept my eyes on the road and my voice neutral when I said, "Ms. Brennan, you're drunk. Let's just get you home safely." She laughed, this bitter sound that didn't match the situation, and said, "Always so proper. So correct. Don't you ever want to just break the rules?" I didn't answer, just kept driving, counting the blocks until I could get her out of my car and go back to Emma, back to my small safe life where I didn't have to navigate the minefield of a drunk boss who was saying things that would sound very different in the morning. When we reached her building, I helped her out, walked her through the pristine lobby where a night doorman watched us with knowing eyes, rode the elevator to the 14th floor while Catherine leaned heavily against me, her perfume overwhelming in the enclosed space. At her door, she fumbled with her keys, dropped them twice before I picked them up and unlocked it myself, and when the door swung open to reveal an apartment that looked like something from a magazine, all white furniture and modern art and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the glittering city, Catherine turned to me and said, "Come in. Have a drink. Stay." And I said what I should have said from the beginning, "No, Ms. Brennan. Good night. Drink some water and get some sleep." Then I walked away, rode that elevator back down, nodded to the doorman who was now on his phone, and drove home feeling like I'd just navigated a minefield blindfolded, grateful to have escaped with my dignity intact. The next morning, I was called into HR before I even reached my desk, escorted by security like a criminal while my coworkers stared and whispered, their eyes following me down that long hallway to a conference room where 3 people sat waiting, the HR director Patricia Walsh with her tight smile and dead eyes, our company lawyer whose name I didn't know, and Catherine Brennan herself, looking crisp and professional in a navy suit, her hair perfect, her makeup flawless, not a trace of last night's vulnerability remaining. "Sit down, Mr. Carter," Patricia said, her voice clipped and businesslike, and I sat, my stomach already dropping because this wasn't right, this wasn't how gratitude looked. "We've received a very serious allegation," Patricia continued, sliding a document across the table toward me. "Ms. Brennan has reported that you behaved inappropriately toward her last night, that you made unwanted advances, that you touched her inappropriately, and that you entered her apartment without permission." The words hit me like physical blows, each one landing with the weight of impossibility because this couldn't be happening, couldn't be real, except Catherine was sitting right there nodding slowly, her face a mask of professional concern, and I realized with dawning horror that she was sacrificing me to protect herself, that she'd woken up this morning ashamed and frightened about what she'd said and done, about who might have seen us, about how it would look that she'd called a subordinate to rescue her from a drunk night out. "That's not what happened," I said, my voice shaking with the effort of staying calm. "She called me asking for help. I drove her home. I dropped her at her door. That's it." Patricia's expression didn't change, this practiced neutrality that told me she'd already decided how this would end. "We have Ms. Brennan's testimony," she said coolly. "We have the doorman's statement that he saw you entering the building together, saw what he described as intimate physical contact in the lobby." "She was drunk and stumbling," I protested, hearing the desperation creeping into my voice. "I was helping her walk. Call her phone records, she'll have a call to me at 9:47 last night. Check her outgoing calls." The lawyer spoke for the first time, his voice smooth as oil. "Ms. Brennan states that you took her phone at the bar, that you made that call yourself to establish an alibi, that she has no memory of contacting you. It was such a perfectly constructed lie, so carefully designed to counter every defense I could mount, and I looked at Catherine, really looked at her, and saw nothing in her eyes, no recognition of the man who'd given up his evening to help her, no acknowledgement that she was destroying a single father's life to save her own reputation. "I have a daughter," I said, my voice breaking. "I have a 6-year-old daughter who depends on me. Please. I didn't do anything wrong. I was trying to help." Patricia slid another paper across the table. "This is your termination letter, effective immediately. You'll be escorted from the building. You have 1 hour to remove personal items from your desk under security supervision. We're not pursuing criminal charges at this time, but if you contact Ms. Brennan, if you come near this building, if you attempt to retaliate in any way, we will involve the police." She stood up, the meeting over, my life over, and I sat there frozen while the lawyer added almost as an afterthought, "You should also know that Ms. Brennan is considering a civil suit for emotional distress." They left me alone in that conference room with a security guard at the door, and I put my head in my hands and tried to understand how doing one decent thing had blown up my entire existence, how I was going to explain to Emma why I'd be home in the middle of the day, how I was going to pay rent when no other firm would hire me once word spread about what I'd been accused of. The next 3 weeks were a nightmare of rejection and whispers, of job applications that went nowhere, of Emma asking why I seemed so sad, of my savings draining away while I tried to find work and discovered that Catherine's lie had spread through the professional network faster than truth ever could. I sold my car to make rent, started applying to retail jobs and restaurants, anything that would keep us afloat, and every night I lay awake staring at the ceiling wondering if I should have just ignored her call, if helping people was a luxury that someone in my position couldn't afford. Then one morning I got a call from a number I didn't recognize, a woman's voice saying, "Mr. Carter? This is Detective Sarah Chen with the District Attorney's Office. I need to speak with you about Catherine Brennan." My first thought was that they were finally pressing charges, that Catherine had decided destroying my career wasn't enough, but Detective Chen said something that made my heart stop: "We're investigating Ms. Brennan for insurance fraud and embezzlement. We've been watching her for 6 months, and we have security footage from her apartment building from the night of October 17th. I've seen what actually happened, Mr. Carter, and I'm very sorry for what you've been through." She asked me to come downtown, to give a statement, and when I sat in that sterile interview room and watched the footage she showed me, the lobby camera clearly showing Catherine barely able to walk, me carefully supporting her, keeping my hands respectful and appropriate, Catherine trying to pull me closer while I maintained distance, the timestamp proving exactly when we'd arrived and how quickly I'd left. I started crying right there because someone finally believed me, someone finally saw the truth. The doorman was her friend, Detective Chen explained, her voice gentle. He lied in his statement to support her version because she'd paid him off before, helped him cover up other things. We have evidence of that now too. She paused, sliding more papers across the table. Ms. Brennan has been systematically defrauding the company for 2 years, embezzling funds through false invoices and ghost accounts. She panicked that night because she'd been drinking with a potential witness who was asking questions, and when you showed up, she saw an opportunity. If she could create a scandal about inappropriate behavior, claim emotional distress, take a leave of absence, she could muddy the waters of our investigation, make herself look like a victim who was being persecuted. The pieces clicked into place: the elaborate lie, the speed of my termination, the lawyer present at that meeting. She used me, I said quietly. She destroyed my life as a diversion. Detective Chen nodded. We need your testimony. We need you to tell your story in detail, to provide documentation of how your termination happened, to help us build a case that includes not just the fraud but also the false accusation and conspiracy to cover up her crimes. She leaned forward. I can't promise this will be easy, Mr. Carter. But I can promise that the truth matters, that justice exists even when it takes too long to arrive. Over the next 4 months, I gave depositions, testified before a grand jury, watched as Catherine Brennan's carefully constructed empire collapsed piece by piece. The company's internal investigation revealed that Patricia in HR had known Catherine was lying, had helped fabricate the case against me to protect the firm's star performer, that the lawyer had been complicit in constructing a narrative designed to discredit me before I could become a problem. The day Catherine was arrested, footage playing on the local news showing her being led out of the office building in handcuffs, I felt nothing, no satisfaction, no vindication, just exhaustion and the faint hope that maybe now I could start rebuilding. The company called 2 days later, offering me my job back with back pay, offering a settlement that included a formal apology and enough money to actually mean something, but I told them what they could do with their offer because I'd learned something important in those weeks of hell, that I didn't want to work for people who'd thrown me away the moment it was convenient, who'd chosen a liar over an honest man, who'd valued reputation over truth. Instead, I took the settlement money and started my own small accounting consultancy, working from home so I could be there when Emma got off the school bus, building something that was mine, that nobody could take away with a lie. 6 months after Catherine's arrest, I got a letter forwarded through Detective Chen. Catherine had written it from jail, this rambling apology that tried to explain the pressure she'd been under, the mistakes she'd made, the regret that haunted her now. She wrote that she'd thought about that night constantly, about how I'd helped her when I didn't have to, about how she'd repaid kindness with betrayal, about how she understood if I could never forgive her but she needed me to know that she was sorry, that she saw clearly now what she'd been too proud and frightened to see then. I read it once, then filed it away, because her apology wasn't for me, it was for her, another attempt to offload guilt that she'd have to learn to carry. Forgiveness wasn't mine to give or withhold, I was just trying to move forward, to build a life where one person's lies couldn't destroy everything I'd worked for. Emma asks me sometimes about that time, about why we ate a lot of pasta and why I seemed worried, and I tell her an age-appropriate version of the truth, that sometimes people make mistakes, that doing the right thing can be complicated, that the world isn't always fair but you keep trying anyway because that's what makes you who you are. Last week, I picked up a new client, this small business owner who'd been burned by her previous accountant, who was nervous about trusting anyone, and when she asked why I'd started my own firm, I told her the whole story, the call, the drive, the accusation, the investigation, the vindication. She listened carefully, then said, "So you're the kind of person who helps even when it costs you," and hired me on the spot because she valued character over credentials. And that's the thing nobody tells you about injustice. It doesn't always end with dramatic courtroom victories or public vindication or the villain getting exactly what they deserve. Sometimes it ends quieter, with you rebuilding piece by piece, with people who believe you slowly replacing the ones who didn't, with the understanding that your integrity wasn't dependent on whether anyone acknowledged it. Catherine Brennan is serving 4 years for fraud and obstruction, Patricia Walsh was fired, the company paid out settlements to 3 other employees they'd wrongfully terminated, and I'm here in my home office with Emma's artwork on the walls and clients who chose me because of my story, not despite it. The security footage that saved me is stored somewhere in a legal archive, time-stamped proof that truth exists even when it's temporarily buried, and every time I think about that night, about the choice I made to pull over and help, I'd make it again, not because it worked out, not because justice eventually arrived, but because the alternative would have been becoming someone I couldn't live with, and no job, no reputation, no safety is worth that price.